Welcome to the Blogger Genius Podcast, brought to you by MiloTree. Here's your host, Jillian Leslie.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. So I am approaching my 1-year anniversary of doing the podcast. And so this week, what I decided to do was to have Paula Rollo, who is our community manager at MiloTree and my very good friend, interview me and ask me all the questions that she's been wanting to know, and maybe you guys have too. So I think you'll like this. It was really fun to do. I love this podcast. I am super committed. And so there we go. Paula, welcome back to the show. This is really exciting for me because this is signaling the end of my first year as a podcaster. And all of a sudden now the seats are switched and you get to interview me and ask me anything that you want. So I don't know, I'm excited and nervous to get started.
I'm excited too. It's like pulling back the curtain,
Yes.
and seeing like all the magic that happens behind the scenes. And I'm excited for everybody listening because I feel like I have this inside track to Jillian that like we talk about things all the time, and like I'm always talking to your brilliant mind, but on Blogger Genius, we only get you talking to other brilliant minds, and like little tiny glimpses of like your genius shines through sometimes. But I think this is just going to be a treat for everybody to get to hear like the real you and how brilliant you are at this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
So are we ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so I want to start with your background and your entrepreneurial journey. I know in like various podcasts we've heard that you have a business degree and you used to be a writer in Hollywood, which is so cool. But I want to know how you pictured your life like as a kid or as a teen, whenever you started saying like, this is what I want my life to be. And then you've changed careers, you've gone from working for someone else to owning your own business. So how did you go about building a life that you loved, and how did that morph and change as you have grown up?
Wow. Okay. When I was younger, I always wanted to be creative, and I always wanted to be entrepreneurial. And I didn't know what that meant, but I had this feeling that I didn't want to work for other people. But again, like, it was all just kind of mushy. And I would say that there are always these two parts of me, and they're not in conflict as much as they kind of, like, as you know me, you kind of know these two sides. One, I am incredibly analytical. Like, I love numbers, I love digging in, and I love research. I nerd out in so many ways, like in my own free time. And I'm incredibly creative, and being creative really feeds my soul. That if I weren't creating every day in some capacity, like a part of me would die inside. So I've gone back and forth in both of those areas, like going deep in one and then deep in the other. So when I was younger, all I did was dance and draw and write and do things like that. And then as I got into high school, for example, I got really academic because it was what was demanded of me. And I went to college, I went to Stanford, and I was really academic. That's what I cared about, because somehow I knew that my goal was I wanted to be financially independent. And again, I didn't know what any of this meant, but it was like that was the way to do it. So I did that, and I got out of college and I got a business job at Disney, working in their strategic planning department, which was this organization that was like making all these big decisions for Disney. And it seemed cool, and I hated it.
Oh my gosh.
And
How could you hate working for Disney?
Isn't that weird? It was so funny because I'd call people up, from my job, and I'd be like, hey, this is Jillian Tohber calling from the Walt Disney Company. And people would say to me, oh my God, you work at Disney. You must be so happy. You must love it. And I'd go, oh my God, I totally do. And I'd get off the phone with them, and like my day would be so crappy that I would just be crying at my desk.
Aww.
So it was this weird disconnect. And I thought to myself, this is what work life is like. I am really unhappy. And I felt like they rented my brain Monday through Friday, and anybody who was kind of smart could do this job, but it had nothing to do with me. It was so inauthentically Jill. Mm-hmm. So I said, I need to find another job. And I ended up getting a job working for Bette Midler. She had a production company on the Disney lot, because I thought to myself, I need to be creative. This is like the least creative job ever. I need to go that way. And I started working for her, and I kept always in life looking to people and going, who has the better job and who has the more casual clothing? That was always the way that I thought about it. And I'm working for Bette Midler and I was, by the way, I was like scrub. I was getting coffee. I was making copies. I was that person. But the writers would come in and they would like be in jeans, and everybody would listen to the writer. And I'd be like, ooh, that looks cool. Like maybe I could do that. But kind of as an aside, I had gotten into business school during this time. I had applied, and I had even deferred it for a year because I was like, hey, I'm working for Bette Midler, like, sorry guys. But ultimately I decided, you know what, because again, I have these two sides to myself, that I would go to business school. And I went back to Stanford and I got my MBA. And by the way, I loved it because I went back to Stanford, and it was very different than the first time I was there, because I just kind of thought, I'm going to do something creative. So I don't really have to care that much about like my classes. And I did things like I took directing and improv and acting and all these. I was like the weird business school student.
Yeah.
And when I got out, I was like, okay, I know you guys really like business, but I'm going to go to Hollywood and become a writer. And I did. I went to Hollywood, and by the way, I lived in my crappy apartment. Like all my friends were getting these really big jobs, and I was like really struggling and writing scripts, and yet then I ended up like getting back working at Disney as a writer, and it was really cool. And so I got to, and as a writer, I was like my own little business person, because it was like my own career, and I was navigating my own career. And then, as I shared previously, I had my daughter, and that changed everything for me. And all of a sudden, I said to my husband, David, I want to take my fate more into my own hands, into our own hands, and let's start a company. And my husband at the time was working at MySpace. He was like a senior person at MySpace. And we started Catch My Party. And I think I've shared this previously. It was a site for teen girls, because that was how we conceived of it, because all my husband was doing was, who was on MySpace? Teens, teen girls.
That's the audience you knew. Yeah.
That was it. And I was writing teen comedies. So it was like, we own this space. This is it.
Right.
We get we get our audience. And lo and behold, teen girls did not care about Catch My Party. They didn't want to share their party photos, but moms did.
Interesting.
And that was like our first moment of saying, whoa, wait a second. We had this all planned out and it didn't work. But we found another audience to serve.
Right.
And that was how it evolved. So I'd love to say that this was all planned and that it has this great like linear path, but it doesn't. And it's just been, and then now we have MiloTree on top of this and the podcast. And what I would say is they've all been what I like to call emergent, meaning they are authentic to where I am in my life, and they don't necessarily make sense in terms of just like if I had a plan, this would be the next piece. No, not at all. But they've all been organic, and they've kind of, I always am listening to what I feel is the right next step and what people are kind of informing me is the right next step.
Yes. That's so interesting. I think what is, you've brought like a second piece to like the average like normal advice that you hear, because people always say like, I guess like when you're graduating high school, they're always like, go towards what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, and like follow your dreams, follow your heart, just do what you love. And like for entrepreneurs, like that stream of advice doesn't stop, right? That's always what we're hearing, and we're always trying to get to like this special day where it doesn't feel like we're working.
Yes.
And then those of us who are actually entrepreneurs are like, no, that doesn't happen. Like I do stuff I don't like all the time.
All the time.
Because that's just, your business is you, and you have to do those things, and that has to happen. But I think that what I hear you saying is that you identify things that you love to do and that are life-giving, and those set your direction. So you're always headed in a direction you love, and sometimes you have to do things that you have to grit your teeth through, But because it's on the way to a direction that you adore, that's okay. And you're willing to grit your teeth, and that doesn't make it fun to do the little jobs that are just menial and that are not fun, but you know your direction is you. That like starting MiloTree, starting a new business is not fun, but going towards something that's organic and that's creative and that has all of these strategic numbers, that makes sense for you.
Absolutely. What I would say is being an entrepreneur looks so cool on the outside.
Yes.
And it is so challenging on the inside.
For sure.
It will challenge you, though, on a whole host of levels. It will challenge you in terms of you have to work when you don't want to work, and you have to do crappy stuff, and you don't have a boss necessarily. So all of that motivation has to somehow be intrinsic.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yes.
can be a struggle. It will challenge you in how you see yourself. And it'll question everything about you. But for me, it's also like the most satisfying path I could ever choose.
Yes.
And it's very humbling because we talk about this all the time. You can think you're really smart and you can think you have a brilliant idea. And then you start working on it and you start hitting walls. And it can be so demoralizing. You know, there's something, I read a lot about other entrepreneurs, and I read about entrepreneurs with these huge companies raising all these rounds of money. And I don't know if people know about this, but there's something called like entrepreneur depression.
No, I don't know about it.
And I would have thought, no, these people, like, oh my God, I just raised $60 million. Like, I should be on top of the world. And there's a real thing where entrepreneurs hit these walls and get really depressed. And I I thank God have not raised $60 million. But there are times where I'm like, oh my God, why did we set out on this path?
Yeah.
I mean, so not every day is puppies and rainbows.
Right.
And in fact, there are times where it's really cool, like you get to speak at stuff, or people come to you and, for advice, or they email you how much they love what you're doing. But that's like such a small piece of it. It has to be someplace inside that is feeling satisfied by what you're doing day in and day out.
Yes. And I think one of the things that not to try to psychologize all entrepreneurs, but I think that at least for you and I both, one of the things that has helped with the entrepreneurial depression and maybe avoiding that a little bit is that we've never made our business define our life.
Yes.
And so we have our business life, we have this entrepreneurial thing that we're doing, and that's wonderful, and we love it most of the time.
Right.
And then
right.
we also turn it off, and we have our life over here. We have our kids, we have our family, and we have those two separate things. So thinking about that from that perspective, it kind of I would think kind of helps you prevent that depression and prevent that burnout, because it's not my identity. It does not rise and fall on my business. My identity is over here with my family, with things that I love to do outside of making money. And so there's less stress of well, I raised $60 million, but next year I've got to raise 70, or I'm a failure. But that doesn't matter. My failure and success is not just my business.
I would totally agree. It's funny because so many people were like, wait, you were a writer in Hollywood. And I go, yeah, I really was. And they go, how could you have ever left it? It's so glamorous. And I said, because my whole worldview shifted, and it was no longer as satisfying for me. And I always have gone toward what feels right. I mean, meaning I try to make very informed decisions.
Yes,
but
of course.
I'm willing to jump.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because David, my husband, who's also my partner, is much more grounded than I am, which is great because he kind of holds us down on the earth. But I'm the one who says, let's do it. Let's go. Let's do it. And I would say that that's probably one of my best skills is I'm willing to jump into the unknown with preparation, but you can't ever fully prepare.
Right. You can't know for sure what's going to catch you because things change so quickly, especially in our industry. Things change so quickly.
Oh my God, all the time. And I believe this. Somebody said this to me when I was in my 20s. And they said, life should be about micro adjustments, because that way you don't end up with the midlife crisis.
Oh, interesting.
And I have lived by that, which is, you know what, this isn't fitting me anymore, so I'm gonna go this way. And then I'll see how that feels. And if it doesn't work out, guess what? I can always course correct. So I'm a big believer in course correcting.
Right. Just don't do something that can't be changed later, and then you can go forward a lot easier.
Exactly. Like, don't get yourself into a lot of debt, or don't,
Right.
I don't know, but just kind of making those smart choices, but then being willing to say, I'll try it. And if it sucks, I can change. So we just recently, as you know, moved to Austin.
Yeah.
And the way that I could do, and by the way, we have no family in Austin. We barely knew anybody in Austin, but we liked it. And we're like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And my daughter was like, what are we doing? And I said, if we hate it, we can always move back.
Right. Yeah.
And again, that would have been a big deal, but something about having that out made us braver, and that we could do it. And guess what? We're loving it. I'm so happy we did this.
I love that. Welcome to Texas.
I like Texas. Y'all.
Yes, y'all. I end up saying y'all on so many interviews and in professional settings because it's just the word I've grown up with, and I get laughed at a lot for that. So
I think it's like the cutest, sweetest word ever.
It's just our word. It's
I
not
know.
even, I don't even have a Texas accent, but I do say y'all.
I love it.
But in light of like these shifts and these leaps, I want to ask kind of two questions at one time.
Yeah.
And that is, what has been your biggest business success? And then what has been your biggest life success? And I'm asking them that way because like we just talked about, it's not the same. You have these two sides to yourself, and keeping those things in view, I think, is really important, and really encouraging to those entrepreneurs listening that, like, if you haven't reached your business success yet, like, remember all of your life successes, and like this baby I have, or this house I bought, or those things, because it's not just your business, and that's not your life.
My biggest life success is my little family. It is my husband and my daughter and our extended family as well. But we are this really fun threesome, and there is nothing I like better than spending time with them. And it is weird because, again, I work with David, so we're together all the time, but there's nobody that makes me laugh more than he does.
Aww.
And
I love it.
And so by far, like, what has given me purpose is definitely like having my daughter. And I would say my husband feels the exact same way. And again, people can't believe that we work together because they're like, I would die if I had to work with my husband. But we met working together during the .com bubble.
Right.
And so we bonded over work. And so I knew exactly what he was like to work with. And there's nobody, I think, that's smarter or more committed or engaged than he is. So that made perfect sense for us. But I feel like our best creation is our daughter, who's just so fun and awesome, which, by the way, does not mean that she can't be a huge pain in the butt. And that it hasn't been difficult at times. It is. Like, parenting is one of those things where I always say this, like, the least sexy thing you could ever do is have a child.
Yeah.
But I think it is one of the most meaningful things you could ever do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I don't think that it brings natural happiness to your life. It can. Right. But it also can bring a lot of pain, but I think it does bring meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't magically fix things, problems that are there, but yeah.
And it can make a lot of things worse.
Right. It makes everything deeper.
That's a great word.
Pain is deeper, love is deeper, happiness is deeper, all of it.
Exactly. So when I compare that to, say, my businesses, which are like babies, we talk about this. I am so happy to have them because they are outside of, they are kind of part of my family because I work with David, but they are also separate. There's something that I'm building. They're very personal to me. Mm-hmm. And so I would say that those are also a big success. or a big, like a big satisfying piece of my life. But having both is really does balance me.
Yeah.
And that I am not one who just wants to be a bazillionaire and who doesn't care about my family. I care about them all so deeply. And, you know, so I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. Well, what was your biggest business success?
I would say that my biggest business success was like really making it happen. That we've done this and we built now 2 businesses. And I look back and I go, oh my God, you know, we didn't know when we started Catch My Party whether anybody would ever add a party to our site. And we now have tens of thousands of parties that people add and tons of content and millions of people who come to our site. So I think that when I think back, what'd you say?
Crazy. That's crazy that happens, you know?
Yeah, like when I think back when we were like, I remember my mom going like, how do you think you're going to do this?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. The teen girls are going to show up.
They're going to come in droves.
Exactly.
And then they didn't.
And then they didn't.
Did. It's just incredible.
So that's what I would say is when you're in it, it's very difficult to see your successes because you only see what's in front of you and what needs to be done. And you think, oh, if I only get to this point, then I'll be happy. And I fall into that trap as well.
Yeah.
So I do those things that seem kind of cloying where I do force myself to come up with what I'm grateful for and to continually use that as my narrative.
Yeah.
Even if I'm saying, well, I'm super grateful for X, but in my heart I'm going, yeah, but if only I had Y.
Right.
Because I do feel like just even putting it out there and making myself go through that exercise is really helpful at loosening the grip of the grasping, of the wanting, of the longing, of the thinking I'm not full or complete.
Yes. I think because entrepreneurs are such dreamers and visionaries, like we do get stuck on like what could be.
Yes.
And we miss like I created something out of nothing.
Yes.
And that's amazing.
I totally
even if
agree.
you haven't taken off yet, even if your business is still strong, like there was a website that didn't exist and now it does because of you. There are people that you're speaking to that weren't being talked to now, you know, before, and now they are because of you. And that's amazing.
Yes.
It's incredible. I remember one day, like the numbers we throw around, like you're like, oh yeah, millions of people come and like, it's no big deal. But like, if you try to picture millions of people in your head, that's insane.
I know.
If you could try to talk to all of those millions of people that you literally talk to every day, you couldn't.
I know. We were living in LA when we started Catch My Party, and my husband is the biggest realist in the world. And I think that our page views hit something like 30,000 or our unique visitors, 30,000 unique visitors a month.
Okay.
And David goes, he goes, you know, that's the size of, I don't know, some place in LA, like where we live, like Santa Monica or something. And I go, oh my God, that would mean like every single person in Santa Monica has come to our site. And he goes, yeah. And I go, like, kind of like we've arrived.
Right.
And I remember him going, yeah, no, that number, like in order to make any money, you know, has to get however many times bigger.
Right.
And I remember being like, oh, but I did have that moment of like, oh my God, everybody in Santa Monica has come to my site.
Yes. And I think it's important to have both. Like we need to have those goals where we're going, but also be like, 30,000 people, like that's such a small number in our industry, right? We're like 30,000, you can barely get into Mediavine with that.
Exactly.
But like 30,000 is crazy.
Crazy. I totally, you know, and so I think you're right, which is, you know, we all sit at our computers in our own little worlds and we don't really understand the impact that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because there are all these people who are coming to our sites or learning or getting entertained or whatever it is. And you're right, there is that. So I do recommend everybody out there to take those moments and force yourself to be in gratitude, to force yourself, even if it feels really icky and uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah.
To make that a habit.
It's so encouraging. It's so encouraging to do. Even I remember one time I was really down on myself. I think it was after a algorithm switch. So like my page views went like cut in half. They probably went from like 300,000 a month to 150 or something like that. And I was like really kicking myself about it. I felt horrible. And my husband was like, wait, you're at 150,000 people a month.
Right.
Do you know how many people that is?
Right.
I talked to like 10 people this month.
Right.
You talk
Right.
to 150,000 people this month about something that you care about.
Yes.
That's a pretty big deal. And I was
Yes.
like, oh, right. Like, I'm just thinking of it in terms of like, well, Jillian talked to 1 million and I only talked to
Yes.
150,000.
Yes.
And they're not people in my head. They're just a number because I'm not.
Exactly.
I have my avatar in my head and that's it. And
Yep.
I'm not thinking about there's 150,000 of my avatar that I get to talk to, and that's amazing.
And touch.
Yes, and change for the better, whether it's with a recipe or a craft or whatever it is that you're doing, you're impacting these people or they wouldn't be on your site.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I love
exactly.
it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love our job.
I do too. I really do. And by the way, like, remember, I'm always looking for the people in the most casual clothes. I am sitting here in my sweatpants and my sweatshirt. I have not showered and I couldn't be happier.
Same situation. It's like the entrepreneur dress code.
It is totally.
Lack of shower. Yes. That's how we roll.
Yes. And I do that thing, which is really funny. Like, I compare myself to Steve Jobs, which is I buy the same sweatpants, like in every color, even the same color, just so I like have a uniform.
Yes. I love it. That's hilarious.
So,
Okay. So pivoting a little bit from successes, the other thing that you and I feel like talk about a lot is how our failures are not just like necessary or like a necessary evil, but they're actually a vital part of our business. And so I want to talk about a little bit how specific failures have shaped the way your business looks today, and what failures have like propelled you into something great.
Ooh, okay. The one thing that I would say, David and I talk about this a lot, and we call them at-bats, like you're at-bat as a baseball player.
Yeah.
And that instead of thinking about something as a success or a failure, we think of it as an at-bat.
Okay.
And the goal is to have as many as you possibly can, realistically speaking.
Yes.
I was reading this article about Nestle, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think this is right, but it could be not. But Nestle like hit it out of the park with Nespresso.
Mm-hmm.
And it grew their business like incredibly, and they have not had many successes since then.
Okay.
And the reason is because they like captured lightning in a bottle. It was like the right idea at the right time, and it boom exploded their business.
Mm-hmm.
But catching lightning in a bottle and like betting your whole business that you're going to find another one of those is like not a good business strategy.
Oh, that's good.
So not many things you try are going to work. And somehow recognizing that makes it feel less personal.
Yes.
And I've started to really think that. So we had this idea recently where with MiloTree, we're way into the, remember we're geeks. So we're into the technology. and what we realized is lots of people were using sites that were not secure, right? We know about like HTTPS versus HTTP. And we noticed a lot of our users were not using secured sites. So we decided, hey, here's an idea. What we could do is we could help these people get onto, I think we were looking at SiteGround because we really like SiteGround.
Yeah.
That we would help them move their blogs to SiteGround off of, say, Bluehost or something, a site that wasn't secure at the time.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, and that could be good for us because we could make affiliate money by doing this. And what we would offer is we'd move your site for you.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked through our data and we found all these people who did not have secured sites. And I reached out to maybe 100 of them.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, here's the deal. Just so you know, your site's not secure. This is not a good thing. I explained why. And what we'll do, we believe in this site called SiteGround, this host called SiteGround, and we'll help you do this. And we thought, wow, this could be a great income stream for us. And we'd be providing our users a service, and, it would be a win-win.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to do it.
Wow.
Nobody. In fact, people were a little, I want to say, kind of almost offended or kind of, and what we realized is that it's kind of risky for somebody to move their site. And, most of us, except for David, are not super technical. And that's
Right.
like, what? Who are these MiloTree people coming in and saying, hey, well, you got this problem and we'll help you. Like, why would I trust you? Even though,
Right.
again, they might be using MiloTree, they might know me still. And like that was, and I noticed I started to feel bad. Like, oh, wow, that didn't work. And then I thought to my, like, what a dumb idea. I started to personalize it. And then what I realized was, no, that was just one at bat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
by framing it that way, I thought, oh, okay, we need to come up with more
Right.
ideas.
Yes.
So this one didn't work. Well, okay, but we're looking, and then what you do is ultimately you do find stuff. It's like dating. You kind of have to date a bunch of people until you find that right one.
Right.
And so that's really the frame through which I think David and I have pivoted our thinking about failure.
Yeah.
The more failures I have, the better, because that means I'm on my way to finding that thing that will work.
What did you get from like that specific example? Were there things that you learned from it that helped you with your next at bet, that like you
What I would
framed the
say,
next one differently or something from it?
what I would say is it taught me that that it showed me again that our customers are much more they're much more creators than they are interested in the technology.
Yeah. That
And
makes
so
sense.
again, that's something that we're always thinking about. And so when we build MiloTree, we're always trying to take the technology piece out as much as we possibly can. And not focus on our features and all this cool stuff we do. We want to do that in the background so that
Right.
the creators can go create.
Yes. And framing it that way means more responses, more purchases. That's
Exactly.
interesting.
Like we've got your back. So what we were trying to say in these emails was we've got your back.
Right.
But ultimately it was too big of an ask.
Right. You've just overwhelmed me with technical
Exactly.
jargon. I have no way to check if you're lying to me. I have no
Yes.
way of understanding. I'm overwhelmed.
Yes. My
And that's
site is
ultimately
up.
not what I come to MiloTree for either, right? It's like
Exactly.
shifting in this direction that like you're thinking, oh, I could help all these people, and these people are thinking like, I just want you to get me Instagram followers.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's what I would say, like how we learned about it and how it has helped inform us. So like my husband is typical guy, like he loves the data. And
Right.
he's like, maybe we could create a dashboard for people's Google Analytics. And I'm like, no, I don't think that our users would have any interest in that.
Right. I'm sure some people would, but it's not like the next step you need to take because the percentage isn't there.
Exactly. Exactly. So it helps us again further define who our customer is and what they're, and that even though we identified a pain point,
Right.
they didn't perceive it as such.
Yes. That's so important too. Like if you solve a problem people don't acknowledge, it doesn't matter that you solved that problem.
Exactly. It's like creating, like think about in your own life. I don't know, like do you need a better way to sit down than a chair? Maybe, a chair's pretty
Right.
good. So it's
Chair
like
works.
that.
It's like the people who invented the banana slicer. It's like,
Right.
yes, your product is more efficient, but did I need it?
Exactly.
And you created
Exactly.
something that did work better than a banana slicer and it would have helped, but the way people are looking at it is just like, no, this could cause me just as many problems as it solves because now I have to wash it, then I have to store it
Exactly.
somewhere.
Exactly.
And they don't understand enough to know that this is actually going to help.
And typically what I have read is that if you have a new solution to a problem that already has a solution, it has to be 10 times as good for somebody to switch.
So true. And we've seen that with every new social media platform that has tried to launch. Like Elo tried to be a thing, and
Yes.
all these other places. And because they're just Facebook but Elo,
Right.
there's
Right. And
nothing
maybe
new and
even
interesting. I'm not going to go over there because you only have one new feature, two new features, and all my friends aren't there yet. And there's nothing to get me there. But
exactly.
with Instagram, when Instagram came out, it was new, it was shiny, it was completely different. When Pinterest came out, same thing. It was new, it was shiny, it was completely different. And so people came over because it was 10 times better or different. even though at the end of the
Absolutely.
day, it's just social media. And my same friends who are on Instagram are also on Facebook, and my same friends are on Snapchat and all the other ones. But it's different enough that I'll do it.
Absolutely. So think about that. Just if, there's a problem that you're trying to solve, how much better is your solution than what's already out there?
That's so good. That's so good. And I guess that can be like a way, follow-up question is just like, how can entrepreneurs look at their failures, and so they don't just ball it up and throw it in the trash and forget about it? That failed, but what keys do you look for to say, I'm going to take this small thing from the failure and try my next at bat? Like, how can we not waste those failures?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think depersonalizing them, which is the more you can say, I'm not a failure, the more you're willing to be curious about why this failed.
Yes.
And to use that curiosity to say, what does this tell me about my assumptions? And what does it tell me about my customer, my avatar?
That's so
and
good.
How are they not connecting?
Right. Yes.
And then there is always this piece that you won't know.
Yes. That's
you
true.
will like make these assumptions, but then that's why you need the at-bats, because you think, okay, I'll go this way then. And you try that. And if that doesn't work, okay, what does that, what is my next hypothesis?
Yes.
But the more things you can be testing and trying in the most down and dirty way, the better.
Yeah.
So for example, and don't be afraid to do stuff that doesn't scale. So in this experiment to see if we could help people secure their sites, all I did was I said, David, please send me like 100, I think it was, I went to our most recent customer, something like that. And I went to every single site and I looked to see if it was secure or not secure. And if it wasn't secure, I took a screenshot of where it says not secure in the browser. And then I came up with an email, and then I would email these people with using the screenshot where it says not secure. And like, this was not scalable.
Right.
But I wanted to see what feedback I got.
Right.
And I did it for, maybe I went through 100 accounts, maybe I sent 25 emails.
Okay.
And got like almost no responses. I think I got no, I don't think I got any positives, and I got one kind of nasty email back.
Wow.
So that was a very strong signal.
Yes. This is the wrong way.
This is the wrong way. Don't go this way. Go another way. And, so again, it's like maybe I spent a couple hours on this. But I was in there mining. I've written about this, which is you're a miner when you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Looking to monetize.
Right.
And again, there's a lot you won't know.
Yes, but it's worth looking at to see what you can identify.
And there are times where you go, well, maybe these were the wrong people you reached out to. Maybe if you reached out to the next 100 people, and that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe that's true.
Right.
So you don't ever really know whether your test was a good test or whatever, but you kind of have to make a lot of assumptions and kind of figure out what your next at bat is.
Right. And then from there, see if maybe you need to start back at the first one.
Yes,
or not.
exactly.
But I think what's interesting in like what you identified from this failure, it sounds like to me, is that, okay, so most entrepreneurs, we have our avatar, like this is a common phrase we know. And for most of us, like we are our avatar, right?
Yep.
Like that's just, it comes from, this is what I know. And so that's what I can speak most to. But I think what's key that you identified there that we don't talk about as much is how your avatar is different than you.
Yes.
And you have this really unique thing where you like numbers, which is very foreign to me, by the way. I hate numbers. If it involves a number, I'm not going to remember. Like, no. I feel like my brain just rejects it as soon as I hear a number. My brain's like, nope, I don't like it.
That's so funny.
I just like creative, and I like strategy, and I like charts that have pictures, not charts that have numbers, and just that's how I am. But you were able to look at this and say, okay, I am my avatar. I'm reaching these entrepreneurs, but there's this big key way that your avatar is different than you. And identifying that is really, really helpful for your success going forward, because next time you can frame it in a different way that, oh, maybe they don't like the number, but they would like this. Maybe they don't like this technical jargon, but like you were saying, they like hearing how it frees them up to be more creative. And that's
exactly.
But if you just stuck with Jillian's My Avatar, you would have never realized that.
No. And in fact, it makes me more empathetic. Mm-hmm. So what I want to say is you can trust me because I've got David. Like, I like numbers, yes, but like I've got this like technical powerhouse behind me.
Right.
And so, and we're trustworthy. And so if you know, that maybe there's a way I could take more of the technical burden off your plate.
Right. Exactly. Instead of sending them an email chock full of numbers and nerdiness and geekiness of how this works.
But also I think too, by sending them an email with a screenshot where it says not secure with your URL, there's a little bit of shaming that I might have done.
Yeah.
Like, ooh, I don't want to look at that. Like, why are you doing this?
Right.
So I think it was not received in the way that I anticipated it was. Right. And again, did I have a moment of shame and like, ickiness? I totally did.
Yeah.
But then I was able to go, no, this is just what you do as you test stuff and you see.
Right. Well, and it was also where the only thing you lost was your time, because it's not like those 25 people went and deleted their MiloTree accounts and demanded refunds because how dare you? They were just like, I don't see what she's doing. The one person got mad, but it wasn't something you couldn't take back. It wasn't something that was going to be, like we were saying before, like, go ahead, jump out, try it, but make sure it's something that you can just completely retreat on if necessary.
Exactly. So that was definitely a really good learning, and I want more at bats. And the hard part too as an entrepreneur is, where do you find the time for that? To carve those out. Right. So what we do is we try to have a list of ideas and go, we need to test these things.
That's good. So,
and yes.
Well, I was just going to say, like, in that, like, what does your typical day look like? How many at-bats do you try? How many days is it just like, I have to share on Facebook, I have to pin on Pinterest?
Okay, well, that's a really good question. And I wish I could tell you that my days are more kind of structured and organized. I live with Post-its.
Nice.
And I have Post-its all over my desk, because they're like immediate. I've tried all these places like Trello, and I do use Trello, but like just in terms of what's most immediate.
Yeah.
I have like my day set out in Post-its. And I have really neat handwriting. So I
didn't know this about you. This is very interesting.
Okay. And I have like my most important tasks up on like on my Post-its. And so what I typically do is I drink a lot of green tea during my day because I find it very calming and soothing. But I have different teams. So I've got you as my MiloTree team, and it's like you, David, and me.
Yay.
And then I've got my Catch My Party team, which right now is my assistant, my lovely assistant in Portugal, Anna. And then I have another assistant in the Philippines named Marie, who kind of comes in. And I've got different Slack channels. So I've got Catch My Party as my Slack channel, and I've got MiloTree. And then I also have another group of like designers who live in South Africa that we work with a lot. And then I also have some consultants that we work with. So we're working right now with Deepak, who has been a guest to work on SEO. So we've worked with ad consultants or SEO consultants or different designer consultants. And so I always have some kind of project working. I'm usually working with some outside help.
Yeah.
And I usually then check in the morning with my teams and see what's going on. And Anna does a lot of the heavy lifting for Catch My Party, but together we are coming up with strategy. We are coming up with blog posts. She's creating them, and then I'm editing them and pushing them out. And what I have found is it's all about the quality of the people you work with. And that if you can find people who you jibe with, who you like to, it's a little bit like, hey, how was your day? How was your Thanksgiving? That kind of thing. Like, I like my team personally, and I like them professionally.
That's good.
And I feel like they've got my back.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. But and so therefore it's a little more ad hoc than you would think it would be, in that, like, I don't, some people block out days. Today I'm going to work on blog posts. Tomorrow I'm going to work on social, all that stuff. I wish I could be that organized. But it's typically a little more, okay, this week I know I want to do these certain things. Also, we do, all these blog posts are going live. We do 3 blog posts a week on Catch My Party. I do a podcast episode every week that goes live that has a whole host of stuff that has to happen. So there are a variety of things that keep kind of moving forward. And then in the midst of this, I'm trying to, in the cracks, figure out what the next at bat is, or working with a specialist. Right now we're experimenting with SEO and Pinterest ads.
Right.
And so those are the 2 things kind of running in the background.
You've almost transitioned from this one-man show that we all start out as to a manager, and having teams of people that work for you, and still doing a lot of the legwork yourself, because that never goes away. But there's this management aspect that makes your day, it sounds like, a little more chaotic.
It does. And what I found is the fewer people I have to manage, the better. I've grown my teams bigger, and I've kind of, I shrink them down to like the bare bones.
Yeah.
But what I would say, we talked about this before we started recording, is like, how do you know when to hire somebody or when not to, that kind of thing. And what I would say is start with something like UpWork, which I use, which is where I can find, or Fiverr or something. I've got a task. I need help with this task. I will hire somebody to help me. And if I find a gem, I will then give them another project.
Interesting.
So I don't go, oh, I need a VA for everything. I need a VA to do this task.
Right. And then you scale your VA instead.
If I like my VA, if we work well together, if my VA is responsive and responsible and kind-hearted, then I'll go, you know what? I've got another project. So I think in terms of projects. And that way I can budget, I don't know, $100 to try them out.
Yeah.
And see how it works before I'm willing to commit, I don't know, thousands of dollars.
Right. Yeah. But
and
then you
I
can slowly
can pull
grow
back.
That team.
So again, I think of it as emergent more than I think of it as top down.
Right. And then how did you know it was time to hire your first VA test?
I was drowning. I was drowning and I was making enough money that I could justify it.
Okay. And what does enough money look like then?
Ooh.
I think a lot of people are in this position, like, should I, shouldn't I? And I think that it does help breaking it down to a project, because normally the decision is, I'm going to hand over all social media forever. And it's going to be like $900 a month. And that's too much. But how do you know that you have enough money, and how do you identify that first project when you are drowning and you have to have time to hand something off?
Okay, here's what I would say. How much is your time worth? And if in fact it is, if your time, and again, I like numbers, so you can figure out how much your time is worth by thinking about how much you make, how many hours you work. Okay, so I make, let's say, $28 an hour. If I can hire somebody for less than $20 an hour, it's worth it, because I can then use myself in that hour to do something of higher value.
So for the first one, it may not even be taking hours off your plate. It may be more changing what you're doing with your hours.
Yes. If I can move to a higher task, like do it, let's say, social media, my social media is kind of this rote job. And I could, and it's not using all of my brain in terms of my creativity or my ability to go mining for other opportunities. It's worth it for me to hire that out And then I can use my own resources, my own brain for something that could bring in more value. The problem with kind of what we do is we get on these like habit trail wheels, and it's hard to get off of them. And I struggle with this as well. Like, oh, I'll just go do it.
Right.
And then what I realize is, there's 3 days have gone by and all I'm doing is social media, and I haven't been able to elevate above it and really do some strategy or reaching out or whatever other things are that will push my business forward, not just keep me in the same place.
That's so good.
And again, here's what I would say. For my the people I work with, I typically create little training videos.
Oh, that's good.
That I then add to YouTube as like non-public or whatever, so that there's a link, so that I don't then, let's say I'm going to try somebody out for a project, and this is how I want to do a task, like do Facebook posts or something like that. I will make a video and go through step by step how I think about it, how I do it, post it so that that VA can see that video. Then let's say I hire this person and you know what? It doesn't work out. And here's what I would say too. Cut your losses early. If it's not working at the beginning, it's not going to work at the end. So move on in a kind way, but find somebody else. But then I've already got the training video.
Right. You don't waste. I talked to her for 45 minutes.
Exactly.
And
I've already
fired her
invested.
The next day.
There's this thing called sunk cost, which is, let's say you're at a restaurant and they say it's an hour wait, and now you've waited an hour and they say, oh, it's another hour or whatever. And you go, well, I've already waited an hour. Well, that's gone.
Right.
Evaluate whether you still want to wait another hour. So, it's like, well, I've already trained her and it's like 45 minutes, but it's not work. I spent all this time already. I've invested all this energy. I can't pull up. No, you can pull up.
Right.
So therefore, systematize things in very down and dirty sort of ways.
Yes. Because it's not worth the mental load to keep on somebody who's failing.
It is so not worth it. Like, work with people you really like. Yes. Life is short.
Yes.
Find
one of the best benefits, right, of working from home is you don't have that annoying coworker you hate.
Exactly.
You get to pick your coworkers, and you can love.
And I will share this. We talk about this. I am a huge introvert, and I get enough social interaction just by like chatting with you on Slack, and then I can just go away and just be quiet and not have that coworker come into my office. So that really works for me.
Yes, you can mute me when you need to.
Exactly. And that's what I would say. So systematize, do things in projects. And I will say this, I think we did this, I don't know if we did this. I think we did. Like, let's start with 2 weeks.
Yeah, we did.
See how it goes.
We did.
See if we're both happy.
Yes. And that takes mental load off too, because if it hadn't worked out, it wouldn't feel like, oh, Jillian fired me, I'm not going to talk to her again.
Right.
It would have just been like, well, it didn't work. My expectations were different than her expectations. And, maybe she's too picky, but I'm not going to feel bad about myself because it was
right. We can still be friends. Yep.
You can do the old breakup. It's not me, it's you.
Right. Exactly. So that's what I would say, which is, make these, be flexible. I think that, like, as we're talking, the theme that I keep hearing is this idea of being an entrepreneur is all about being flexible, and it's all about not taking things personally, which I struggle with.
Yes. Oh, it's so hard.
But it's like, if there are a couple things that I would say, it's more at bats, like really put yourself out there to try, because who cares? And, don't beat yourself up as much as we all like to do, and personalize it.
Yes. Yes.
That's the other stuff, which is, and to notice the stories we tell ourselves, because so many of them aren't true.
Yes. I feel like you tell me that every week.
Yes.
This is true Jillian right here, guys.
Yeah. And it is, and I don't know, like, just even, I say it to my daughter all the time. Yes. She comes up with these elaborate tales of how tomorrow at school is going to be a bad day. And I go, wow, what a story.
Right.
And
it's so helpful to hear that, like, rational, you're right. This is one possible outcome of an infinite number of possible outcomes.
Right. And how do you know you're right?
Why
And
would
that's
I
gonna
pick that
happen?
one?
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So good. Okay, so as we're ending here, I do want to know this is a year of Blogger Genius, which is amazing. And so I want to know what inspired you to start the Blogger Genius podcast in the first place. And then also, what information gap do you feel like it's filling in our industry?
Ooh, okay. I am a huge podcast listener, so I am my own avatar.
Perfect.
And I love the intimacy of it. And I am, again, I love to learn. So the idea that by having this platform, I can invite people on and learn from them and then share it with other people, like there could be nothing better for me.
I love it.
And I haven't done any podcasts where it's just me talking. And maybe I will get there. But I feel like having a guest and kind of getting to ask the questions that I want to ask, it gives me this excuse to even ask the more personal questions or the question that, you wouldn't necessarily ask at a cocktail party.
Right. Yes.
So weirdly, there's a selfish component to it, which is I'm learning along with you.
Right.
And that has been incredibly satisfying. I went to a conference called Podcast Movement, and I had been toying with the idea for a long time. And I took a workshop, a one-day workshop that said you could start a podcast really easily. And I have to say you can, but it's not as easy as I thought it would be. Just
Good to know.
But I did it, and they said that if you that most people quit before their 8th podcast.
Wow.
So I made it like a thing that I was going to get past 8. And I loved it from the get-go.
That's so cool.
And I guess the gap, the hope of what I'm providing, and please reach out to me and let me know if this is true, is I'm hoping to shine the light on the hard lessons or what people are doing, or that there is no one right answer, and to hopefully make it not as lonely.
Yes.
And that you can hear other people's struggles or other people's successes and see what you can then take into your own business. And I hope to be a friendly voice in your ear cheering you on.
Yes, I think you do that. And I think to connect it with what you were saying too, like it almost gives listeners ideas for their next at-bat. Like SEO wasn't on my radar, and then Deepak gave us 1,000 ways to grow in SEO. And maybe this or that business plan, depending on where people are, they can listen and they can hear from somebody else's at-bat and go, I want to take a crack at that ball. I'm going to try that.
Absolutely. And then the thing that we always talk about is just because it's working for somebody doesn't mean it will necessarily work for you.
Right.
And this has been a hard lesson for me to learn.
Yeah.
So therefore, hopefully the guests give a whole host of ideas, and you can see if I'll try that in my business. And again, this is the piece that I'm always working on, which is if it doesn't work, it's not personal to me. It's like when people personalize, like, oh, Facebook doesn't like me.
Yes.
It's like,
I've
well,
said that.
yeah, but it's like, okay, this might not align for
Right.
my audience or my customers, but I can find something that does align. And I'm going to keep searching.
Yes. Because even somebody else's fail story, there could be somebody listening right now who their audience would have resonated with an email with a screenshot of your site is not secure. And they could go, I'm going to send that email to my audience. And all 100 of their people would say yes, because their audience is different.
Yep.
But the same happens with somebody sharing this epic success. And then somebody would go, oh, I'm going to try that. And then it's an epic failure for them because our audiences are different. But it's helpful to hear what other people are trying and experimenting with. And we can kind of create our experience or our experiments with the benefit of their experience.
Totally. And I guess the thing is, to know that we're all struggling. We're all in the struggle.
Yes.
But it's okay. to be in the struggle. And we all wake up sometimes and go, oh God, I don't want to work today. And then there are days where it's effortless. And that's the thing that I think is so interesting, is that you show up and it just, who knows what you're going to find.
Right. It just clicks.
A little bit like having children, and every day they're different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like some days I turn to my daughter, I go, who are you today? I don't recognize you.
Yes.
You know?
It's
like you went to, yeah?
I had a friend use this analogy for something last night, actually. She said it was like starting a gas stove, and how you turn the crank and it clicks and it clicks and it clicks. And then at one moment, you've just got this flame and it's on and you've got it. But you had to click it so many times at first.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes.
That's how it works. But we just want the flame immediately. And that's not how a stove works.
Yes. Yes. So I would say that if in fact you are willing to work hard, you are willing to do crappy stuff, you are willing to be in the unknown, you are willing to face yourself and your own demons, there is nothing better than this job.
Love that.
And chances are you're not going to get rich tomorrow.
No. But your life could be rich tomorrow.
But your life could be rich.
Yes.
Yes. It's funny. I will say this one thing, which is, so during the dot-com bubble, I was writing television shows.
Okay.
And I was between, remember there are hiatuses in television seasons.
Oh, right.
And so I was on hiatus, and I went to my agents and I said, there's this thing called the internet, guys. And there are these new internet companies that are doing entertainment content, and I want to write a show for one of these companies. So I don't care about money. I want stock options, because guys, we're going to get rich. And my agents looked at me like, you're crazy. And I looked at them like, you guys are just so, you don't get it. Well, I went to work at this company. It was called Z.com. And I met David, and we started working on a project together. And we really hit it off. And ultimately, the company burned through something like $35 million and went out of business. And I always say, I didn't get rich in the way I thought I was going to get rich, but I got rich in a whole different way.
I love that. Love that.
So,
and that's the entrepreneur journey right there.
And there it is. There it is. You don't know what's going to show up in front of you.
That's amazing.
But it could totally change your life.
Well, I don't know how we could end a podcast better than that.
Awesome. Well, I have to say, this has been really fun. And thank you to you, Paula, for being my partner in crime. And what I always call you, my best thought partner. And I'm always saying to David, isn't Paula so smart? Like, look what she came up with. So I want to just thank you and let you know how much I appreciate you and all that you do.
I appreciate you and being on this team. It's a lot of fun.
And also, I want to say thank you to my audience for showing up every week and listening to me. And please reach out to me. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I won't take it personally, maybe a little bit, but still, please do it. And let me know what you want to hear from the show. And just thank you for coming along on the journey. Get MiloTree to grow YouTube and Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook and your email list. And remember, get your first 30 days free. I welcome you to join the family.